we have Professor Vanessa here. So shall we start, Ajahn Tai?
Yes,
Okay,
so before start the session, please allow us to take this opportunity to briefly introduce like your brief bio just a bit. Yeah. Ajahn Chang, please.
Okay, Dr. Vanessa Dennen is a professor of instructional systems and learning technology from Florida State University. Vanessa currently serves as the program coordinator for instructional system and learning technologies and academic director of the Ph.D. program in learning design and performance technology. Professor Dennen conducts numerous research on network knowledge activities in professional development settings, the use of emerging online technologies to support formal and informal learning, and the development of identity and community in social media environments.
Dr. Dennen also has authored more than 100 publications and have co-edited 3 books, Virtual Professional Development and Informal Learning in Online Environment, 2013, Social Presence and Identity in Online Learning, 2019, and the latest one, Reshaping International Teaching and Learning Universities in the Digital Age, 2021. She also served as the editor in very well-known journal. I'm excited to say, the editor-in-chief of the Internet and Higher Education. As an instructor, she is committed to the use of open educational resources and open pedagogy whenever feasible. That's what she had it in her CV. Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, please give a very warm welcome to our second keynote speaker for today, Professor Dr. Vanessa Dennen.
Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for having me here. We're working out something with the slides right now because I don't have the ability to share my slides. So for some reason, I can't be set as a co-host. So let's see what we can work out with this. I am happy, well, I'm trying to get this worked out. I'll tell you, I'm very happy to be able to talk about the idea of networked knowledge activities and how they can be used for to try to push us to the next level of education right now, to really capitalize on where we are and the skills and technologies that we have pushed people to use for the last year, because we are at a unique point. We're at a time where we can take what we may look at as a disadvantage. The last year and a half has been difficult, hasn't it? It's been a lot of hard work for everybody who's in education, and it's been frustrating for instructors. It's been frustrating for learners. We have had to overcome a lot of barriers to get to this point. But we see some real possibilities for where we go next. Okay, so I'm going to email my slides right now so somebody else can hopefully load them up and control them. I've also sent them in the chat, by the way, so I don't know which way will get to you faster. I hope we have that sorted out in just a moment. Okay, so I have sent them both through the chat and through the email. Hopefully you will have those shortly.
So Professor, could you try again to share the slide? It may work now.
It does work
Yay!
now. Okay, how wonderful is that? And you know, that's technology.
That's the challenging part of the,
You know, it is. Although I will tell you, I was just about to say, you know what? I'll just go with that. I'll just move them here to remind me of exactly what I was going to say and go along without it. Because in the end, we are able to persevere without the technology and to succeed all the same. It's not the technology, it's not the content that just sits there that we've captured somewhere online that carries the message. It's us as people and the ways that we connect with each other. That is part of the message that I have come to share with all of you. I was about to say this evening, I realize it's the morning for you, but it's late at night here for me. So as I talk about network knowledge activities and introduce you to a framework, as well as talk about some of the ways that it really becomes a building block for us to engage in active online learning, I want to stress first what is my philosophy of online learning. And that's this people first, content second, technology third idea, that the people really are, we use the technology to connect us. I know we wouldn't be connecting without the technology as a backbone right now, but we don't want the technology to be the thing that takes the center stage. It's not about the technology. The content, it's important, but it shouldn't be more important than anything else, because it's really about people connecting. And then the content, we shape it together. But when people are active and engaged in the learning process, when they feel that their needs are being met, then they're actually able to engage better with the content that's provided for them. And the technology should ideally function seamlessly in the background. I can tell you, I'm feeling that tremendously right now. Last week, I went to teach my first class of the term in a new classroom that has been reworked during the pandemic for flex teaching, so that my students who don't feel safe coming to the campus could stay at home. And they overcomplicated the technology in my classroom to the point where all we can think about is the technology because it's not working well for us. And what's really most important, again, is the people in the room and that they're learning. So with that in mind, let's think about what's happened in the pandemic and remote teaching. A lot of the focus has been on some of these things that you see in the screen, like YouTube, let's make videos, let's make content, let's put content online, or let's find videos to teach others. And those are good things to have. It's very useful, but it's not everything. We have our Zoom, our learning management systems like Google Classrooms, our web cameras. They've been so important to us. The really nice thing that has happened during this time is that a lot of people have gotten comfortable using these technologies and looking to these resources. But it's not everything. It's been necessary. Now we have to consider where we're at in this moment. And people keep asking me, what do you think will happen? Are we going to normal? Will normal come back? I don't think normal can come back, or rather, I should say, I don't think 2019 can come back. We have changed. We have all learned new things. I have a child who is in the 7th grade. She did 6th grade online. And as an online learner in 6th grade, she had to become self-sufficient. She had to learn how to find things for herself online. She had to learn how to manage her time. She had to learn how to manage the technology, how to communicate and network with other people. And she did. Now she is back in a classroom this year, but she's bringing with her this whole new skill set. And you can't just forget that that exists. So I think we have to recognize as we move forward what we're now capable of, what we have experienced. And parts of it we haven't liked, but parts of it will be very useful for us moving forward. So we think about, what do we focus on now? Is it going to be the people or the content or the tools? I hear people telling me right now, remember, people, I hear people telling me right now that they know where there is more content online. And I think that's wonderful. And they know how to use new tools. And I think that is wonderful also. What they're not recognizing quite as much but also important, is that they've learned new ways of communicating with each other. They have built new types of networks. They have new routes for problem solving. And if we forget that as educators, then we are closing our eyes to things that our students know how to do, to things that we can be asking our students to do to push classrooms and to push learning even further. So we have a problem in many ways, which is that we tend to have a very content and tool focused mentality. When I talk to a lot of educators about what they're doing with teaching right now, I hear a lot about, well, I'm using Zoom and I have recorded all of these videos and I have PDFs. I have a lot of content and I've put it online. I put it in the learning management system. Then I say, but what are you doing with your students? Right? Not just giving them a bunch of content. You can give them a bunch of content. You can test them on that content. But what does that mean for them when they're outside of your class? Is that meaningful? It probably isn't. And even before the pandemic, most of them had, mine is right here, right? Everybody, you got your phone? Does everybody have their phone right there? We have our phones, and you have a problem, you have a question. What do? Do you Google it? Or maybe you go onto one of your social media networks and you ask people and say, can you solve this problem for me? That's how a lot of learning is taking place. And we need to start to acknowledge that more in our formal education opportunities. We can't just put the tools out there and say, whoo, let's wait and have the magic happen when we use a tool. The bad experience I had in a classroom last week that I mentioned, somebody came from tech support to help me, and they just kept saying, this is a state-of-the-art classroom. We have spent a lot of money on this classroom. We put a lot of technology in this classroom. It should be really wonderful to teach. And I said, I can't do the things that I want to do with my students in this classroom right now. That is a problem. One of the biggest problems was they put the teacher station so that the monitor was really big and in the center. And I couldn't see any of my students in the room because the monitor was in front of me. It's the people that need to connect. So really, it's not about the tools. We use them, but it's about having the learners identify their goals and then use the tools to reach their goals. And we as educators need to think about what skills we can be developing for our learners and encouraging in the classroom so that they become even better independently at doing this once they are outside of our classroom. So where do we go next? If I were to go back and look in the crystal ball and try to see the future, I would say we don't take the path back to 2019. We have to keep evolving. We have to change based on the experiences that we've had. And although a lot of experiences when we went to remote learning became like sitting in this theater where students were given videos to watch endlessly and instructors made a lot of lecture videos, I don't think this is what we want the future of learning experiences to be like for everybody. This is what I would like the future of learning experiences to be like. I would like it to be people developing their personal learning networks. And so in this image, we see that we have communication tools and knowledge building tools. They don't mean anything without people using them together. We have peers with common interests, and we have expertise and authoritative sources. And so these tools are bringing the people together, and they're forming learning communities, and they're sharing their knowledge resources. And we are using some of the more traditional things that we had prior to all of this, some of the more static pieces of content that we had, as well as some tutoring tools. But we've got so much more than that now because we've opened the walls of our classrooms and we've told people to connect with each other. So that brings me to the big idea I wanted to share with you today, which is networked knowledge activities. This is how we encourage active learning for our students, by bringing them into this networked knowledge activity world. So here's the framework of networked knowledge activities. And this is something that my lab has been working on. And we have been observing what people do when they get online and they try to solve problems and they try to learn new things with each others. What are those actions that they take? And I'll walk through each of them quickly. I could say so much more about them, but I'm just giving you an overview tonight. This morning for you. First is the idea of collecting. There's so much that's online. So if you have good search skills and you find things, you start to collect them. I'm guessing there are a number of you who are collectors. Do you download a lot of things, or do you bookmark a lot of things? You see things that are of interest and you make it so that you can get back to them. So collecting is like at the beginning of all of this. So we're trying to collect knowledge from our network, or perhaps we're already doing it collaboratively with other people. We're trying to solve a problem together. So we're all trying to collect knowledge objects. Next is curating. So curating is taking those knowledge objects and doing something very purposeful with them, making a tailored collection, a collection that has meaning to it. We're taking the ones that help solve a particular problem, that are at a particular quality level. And we could be looking at everything that's been shared in a network and just selecting from the network the pieces that we think are going to be useful. Or we could have a huge collection of items and be wanting to figure out which ones we should give to our network. So bringing them for the network. And that's that act of curation, being very intentional about selection of a certain subset of items and perhaps annotating those items or putting tags on them so other people can identify them and make their way through them. Then we have sharing. Right? There's share buttons in so many of the tools that we use now. It's very easy to share with other people. We do a lot of this very general sharing all of the time. We can make it more purposeful sharing. And if you're starting to get the idea that I could combine some of these, like I could collect and then curate and share, exactly, that is something that we can do. And that is something we can ask our learners to do. Brokering is a very specific kind of sharing, where we see different groups of people and we say, oh, this group of people over here, they've got something really great. And I don't want to just share it to the world. I know that this other group of people over here would really benefit from it. So I'm going to be the middle person and take it from one group and move it to the other group. Very intentional sharing. And of course, when we share, we talk with each other and we negotiate with each other. As we do that, we come to understand things differently. And again, these activities all start to mix together. So I share something, you talk to me about it. We negotiate things about it. Then you decide you want to share something back to me. Sometimes we end up constructing something that was new out of that activity. And these are all activities that center around knowledge objects that can be facilitated by online tools that help people interact with each other and achieve their learning goals. We could organize the activities in this way so that we have some that are about managing knowledge. That's our collection and our curation, where we're taking knowledge objects and trying to figure out what to do with them. There's also the communication ones, like sharing and brokering and negotiating. And finally, the acts of creation, which is not just constructing something, but through processes of negotiating or even curating, taking things that other people have created, but making a new grouping of them and providing new meaning in that itself is an act of curation. So as an instructor, you can look at all of these and say, what do I want my students to be able to do? I want them to be able to effectively communicate about knowledge. Okay, so then maybe I want them to share and I want them to negotiate. Maybe I want them to create things, but I don't want them to have to start from the beginning. So I ask them to see what's already out there and to curate, and maybe they build on it and construct something new. And that's how we take this back to the classroom. And we can do this, what I like to call network knowledge activity math, where once you're able to identify as an instructor, this is kind of like writing learning objectives. You identify the precise things you want your learners to be able to do, you can add them together. You could have learners collect a whole bunch of resources and then they work and negotiate together. Well, which are the ones that we really need to solve this problem? And then they curate a subset of them that are going to be effective for solving that problem. And that's how the network knowledge activity math works. So to go back to the idea of the tools, it doesn't really matter what tools we're using. We use them to access content and networks, but they're all kind of the same in the end. And the content, we need to realize that it's just created by people for other people. There's nothing that's so magical or special about the content. Sometimes I wonder, like, how many teachers last year created a video about the exact same thing? How many times did we duplicate our effort? And we spent a lot of time making that content, but did we spend as much time engaging with each other around that content? The content objects, it's just storing information so that we can go back to it later. But knowledge networking, that becomes a really important life skill. So we can take all of these bits and pieces of information that we have in our everyday lives. It's on the internet, it's in our, just around us in the world. It goes from online life to offline life. And as people, as citizens, we need to learn how to navigate that. We need to learn how to work together with others to take what's a mess of bits and pieces and make it into something that's organized and make sense of it. And when we have expertise in an area, to share with others. So sometimes we're the ones who are contributing the knowledge and contributing the organization, and other times we're looking to other people to help do that for us. It brings us all together as part of a large network. When we have these skills, we're really ready to engage in all sorts of current educational trends. Micro learning is hugely dependent on people being able to effectively engage online. Open pedagogy and renewable assessments, that's having our learners themselves go out and contribute to this economy of knowledge objects that are out there in the world. And they don't just build them out of nowhere. They build them after they've seen what's already out in the world. They identify the needs. They see what other people are asking for. They work with other people, and they're being part of this knowledge economy. And this is what's being asked of people when they are working as professionals, and it's what's being asked of people as they manage their everyday lives. So with that in mind, I like to say that, as educators, our job is to help our learners develop these skills in the digital realm and set them on the path. You can see in this image that there's a rainbow in the distance. And it looks like maybe way off in the distance, the rainbow, they end in the pot of gold, that may be somewhere on this path. We just set the learners on the path. We don't know where their rainbow ends, but if we give them these skills, they will be ready in the future. And they are more ready than ever to do this after what they've experienced in the pandemic, where they've had to use a lot of technology and troubleshoot on their own. So as I wrap this up, I think it's really important also that we don't focus so much on the tools and the content and how to push that to the next level, because if we enable our learners, they're going to be the ones who, through these acts of collection, curation, sharing, brokering, negotiating, and constructing, they will be the ones who shape the next generation of content and tools. We can put the power in their hands. And when they do that, when they're active learners, it will be more meaningful for them, and they will learn better. And hopefully they in turn will pass that on to the next generation of learners. And that's what I came to share with you today. And I would love to chat about it with all of you now, to hear your ideas or to answer some of your questions. And I saw people asking about would the slides be shared, and absolutely share the slides. I'm happy to share them. And I am happy to have you join my network. So my contact information is there as well.
Oh, wow. Vanessa, it has been so impressive. I really enjoy your thoughts and also your ideas. In Thailand, we have that habit of using social network. For example, you've been to Thailand many times and stay for many years. Siam Paragon, right in the middle of Bangkok. It is ranked #1 in the world for most how to say, most check-in spot ever in Thailand and also in the world. We can see that Thai people love using social network for entertaining, for their pleasure, but not much for their learning. So in your opinion, how to transform this culture from entertainment into education successfully? Could you have any ideas, please? Thank you.
Yes, that's a wonderful question. I think it's scary for people at first. And you have to think about this from two sides. There's both the teacher side of it and the learner side of it. From the teacher side, I think it's scary because we give up some of our control. Right? Once we get out of a classroom setting, once we get out of controlled communication, we don't always know what our learners are going to encounter and what they're going to bring back to the classroom. We can either look at that as something that we don't want to have happen, or we can say, you know, I'm the expert and I know how to handle all of this information and all of these people I encounter. So I want my learners to bring it to me. And I'm going to then demonstrate for them how we manage this. And one of the things that happens anyway is the learners, they do look things up on their own. They just may not tell their instructors. So sometimes they find materials online that are wonderful. And if they shared it with the instructor might use it in the future. Sometimes they find materials online that are not good, and they share them with their friends, and everybody studies from the wrong materials when that happens. And if they had shared it with the whole class and the instructor knew, the instructor could look at it and say, you know, this maybe isn't great, but let's talk about what makes it not great. And that provides an additional learning opportunity. But instructors need to become more comfortable with performing their expertise in the moment, as opposed to always having just a prepared lecture. Now, for the learners, sometimes the concern is that, and this is a concern for instructors as well, that they don't want to experience what we call context collapse. It's when you bring two contexts together. So they don't want to have their personal world merged with their learning or professional world. And we manage things like that by allowing people to have multiple accounts in their social networks, or using a subset of tools that are perhaps not the same tools that everybody uses for their social networks, but tools that allow us to use those same kinds of actions, you know, the same kind of sharing actions and tagging and commenting on items. We do them in other tools, not our primary social platforms, because we know that people know how to do these actions already. We just want to put it in a place where they don't feel uncomfortable, because that can often be the barrier as well. You know, I don't want my teacher to see what I'm doing on the weekend when I have fun with my friends. So if we can help them keep those worlds apart, but still use the underlying skills, that's how we can make it be more successful.
Oh, wow. Now we have got tips on how to live our life with social network. Thank you so much. And I think that is really practical. Professor Vanessa, as you can see on the screen in yellow color, okay, we have got so many more questions for you. I think you are one of the big hits here. Now, how about I visit some questions? For example, the second one from the left, how can we integrate our content out of the network? I mean, sharing the content between educational staff and industrial guides as practical learning during the pandemic era. From Professor Wan Rudy. Okay, any ideas on this, please? Thank you.
So if we are trying to, you know, connect what we're doing in educational institutions to people who are out in the workforce, that's where moving things online is tremendously powerful. We have to figure out where those people are. You know, is there a certain platform that a certain tool or platform that they are using, and how do they organize themselves? Is it a group? Do they use tags, perhaps? And then start putting content content out in that area, joining their groups. And I saw another question that said, I want to keep things private. How do I manage this? Well, maybe you set up a second account on some of these tools, and you make it clear that this is your professional account instead of your personal account. Like I would never have a personal account that said professor or doctor on it, but I might do that if I had a professional account. The professional account, I might put a more professional photograph on for my profile. Or I might have the professional account that doesn't even have my name, but has my department name, and it might be shared with some other people. And we could join those groups and network in those ways. Sometimes reaching out and making a connection with one or two people who are part of that industrial group or that area of practice, making connections with those people and saying, hi, I'd like to share these things. Where is the best place? And they'll tell you, or you tag them and then they share it with their networks. And suddenly you start to get a larger audience. It takes a little bit of time, but with making the right connections through the people, you can start to get them to boost the signal and share out your information, and more people will access it.
Thank you so much, Professor Dennen. I think what you share with us is very, very, show us that people first. And, because nowadays we so focus on technology and content, as the priority for, our online teaching. But sometimes, we seem to, forget some very, very important thing. So, the active learning activity that you can, get people together as a network. That very, very fruitful thought that, you just share with us today. So thank you very, very much from, from us. And we send you to have a good night.
Thank you.
What time is it over there, Professor?
It is almost 11:30 p.m.
Oh.
All right. So thank you from here, bottom of our heart to you.
Right.
And so many people say thank you in the chat and also on the Padlet. So have a good night and hopefully see you here next year or before that.
I look forward to traveling to Thailand again. And thank you very much for having me tonight, this morning. Have a wonderful day.
ราตรีสวัสดิ์ครับ
Good night ค่ะ
Good night.
ค่ะ